Always great to see you. Thanks for taking a couple minutes.
Yeah.
First question, day one of the so-called insurgency. How's it going?
Good. We're going to small counties. We think it's important to go to every nook and cranny of these early states, and Iowans, I think, really appreciate when you show up. I did that in Florida. I was the first governor to do public events in all 67 counties, and we know Miami, Palm Beach, Tampa, people go there, but when you go to the smaller communities, people really appreciate it. So we're fighting for every vote in every nook and cranny in this state.
When you talk to Iowans, what is the predominant question, the predominant issue that they ask you about?
I think it's just they see the country's in decline. They see we're losing economically to China. They see the problems with our culture. They see the problems with our military and that having issues. And I think they want to see it turned around. So this is kind of like a Reagan-Carter moment where we need to put the country on a fundamentally better path. I reject this idea that decline is inevitable. I think it's a choice. And I'm running for president to reverse that decline.
Of course, there are a lot of critics of your campaign, a lot of press about that. Specifically speaking about Rich Lowry, wrote an article in Politico. He says you have no economic message, or you haven't had one yet. What do you say to that?
Well, one, that's not true. I mean, we talk about the cause of the inflation, which is federal spending and borrowing, and the Fed. We talk about the bureaucracy, the lack of an energy policy. So we've been doing that. But we are on Monday going to actually unveil our first major economic speech. It's going to be a declaration of economic independence from a lot of the elites and people that have gotten us into this mess. And it provides a way forward for the country to grow again and for people to have opportunity again.
Can you give me anything specific out of that speech that we can look forward to?
Yeah, look, I mean, we're going to identify some of the problems that have happened in our generation, putting China in the WTO and giving them most favored nation status. That has not worked out for us the way people promised it would. The quantitative easing after the financial crisis, that became a mainstay of monetary policy. That has been good for people with assets. It has not been good for the average American, and then more recently with the COVID lockdowns and the excessive borrowing and spending, that triggered huge economic problems. Now, Florida, we said no to that. We fought back, and as a result, our economy is the best of all 50 states. So those are elites that were imposing those policies. They have not had the well-being of the average American in mind. We're going to focus our economic agenda on if you work hard, you get the most of your God-given talent, you can succeed in America again. That's what we got to get back to.
Just two more questions. A lot of people also have latched on to your willingness to work with a guy like Robert Kennedy Jr., perhaps putting him at the CDC or the FDA. A lot of people criticize that move. Do you stand by
Well,
what you
that's
said?
actually not what I said about heading those agencies. I mean, we're going to have a medical doctor, we'll have a PhD, at those agencies. But I've also promised to bring a reckoning to all the medical bureaucracy for how they handled COVID. And so something like RFK Jr., he's been right on Fauci and has identified the problems with the COVID lockdown. So I want to have a task force that's got bipartisan support that can go in, hold these people accountable, because this can never happen to our country again. What they did by closing schools, closing businesses, doing all that, that laid waste to communities across this country. They have never been held accountable. So we need accountability. So that was the issue that I said I'd consider.
Do you think it speaks more to our politics as a country that you can't even float an idea like that without getting just steamrolled by criticism?
Yeah, but look, anytime I say something, they twist and they do whatever. That just goes with the territory. I got a lot of people shooting at me. That's fine. Just knows you're over the target when you're taking the flak, so I'm fine to have that. But at the end of the day, I do think some of these problems can be tackled with bipartisan support, particularly the problems with the COVID lockdowns and the policies and the problems with the medical bureaucracy.
One more question for you. Can you give us an example of your life outside of politics where you've been put in a position where everyone is counting you out, says you're too far behind, you can't come back, something similar in life outside of politics to where you're at right now?
I mean, that happened to me in athletics all the time. Happened to me in baseball. People said, you couldn't get the job done. I really thrive on that. And at the end of the day, I think some of these people are very interested in kind of doing the narrative they want to see rather than what's actually happened on the ground. So I'm fine with that. I love when people count me out, and we're going to make it happen.